Welcome to Small Town Snarks. I'm Joel.
And I'm Miranda. Let's get snarky.
Hey, Miranda.
Hey. Hey, Heather.
Hey, Heather.
What's your damage?
I couldn't tell you.
Heather.
Heather. And someone. Heather. And a babe.
We can't sing too much. If we hit the notes correctly, we'll get copyrighted.
I know. Yeah.
I can't do our usual harmonies.
I could sing these songs nonstop. I have been all morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to start with, what's your favorite song from the show? Because I feel like there are a lot of bangers in this one.
There are so many good songs in Heather's. Mm-hmm. I feel like everyone loves Candy Store. Like, that's your traditional, like, passion number. I also really, really love, oh my gosh, I'm having a moment. I mean, Big Fun is always a good time, good group number. 17. There's so many good numbers in Heather's.
I have a soft spot for Fight For Me.
Ooh, yeah.
I just think it is one of the best modern ballads. Mm-hmm. I'll say it. Yeah, I do. I think it's it's up there. It's one of the best ones.
Yeah.
And that character of Veronica is just so well written in this show. Mm-hmm. I just love it. I'm obsessed with it. You don't often get female heroines in musicals that are written as well as she is.
Oh, for sure. And there's the character development in the show specifically is incredibly well thought out. I mean, You have three characters that are all named the same thing, but each of them are so distinct in their personalities. It's fascinating. And they're supposed to be so alike and yet so different all at the same time.
So, have you seen the movie?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, me too. So my first experience with the material was the movie, and I remember my dad, who's a bit of a movie buff, had me watch it, and first I was kind of like, this is weird, because it is very strange, like that opening shot just of her like putting on the red scrunchie, and it's like very dramatic, and then they're doing the croquet, and Winona Ryder's face is in the ground, and you're like, what is this?
Right.
It is so much fun. It's definitely a cult classic, but it's really interesting because it kind of hit this Renaissance period or this comeback period around this time, honestly, and maybe a couple years before. And there's a lot to unpack with the story itself, but I think it's really interesting that people were so like attracted to JD in the movie, and also the musical. You know, these girls are just like, oh my god, JD, and it reminds me of I'm a true crime girly. Like, I love listening to all the podcasts. I was listening to one yesterday that made me a little queasy, but normally they don't. But there are women who, like, when guys do these horrible things, like, they'll like marry serial killers in jail. Like, if there's a male serial killer in jail, if he is slightly like conventionally attractive, he's gonna get marriage offers. And it's so weird. It's the weirdest thing. And it kind of reminds me of this vibe that we've given towards JD, like romanticizing him as a character, when really he's an abuser, and he is an attempted mass murderer, and all these other things, but we totally romanticize him even in the show. So really interesting character dynamic there, but that's part of why I just love Veronica's journey so much, is she's with these horrible girls and then pivots to this horrible guy who she thinks is on her team, and he's, spoiler alert, he's not, you know. Nope. He is in it for himself. So, and we had our code name Paulette played Veronica, and
oh my gosh,
she was incredible.
Spectacular.
Which Paulette did text me. She is a listener, and she said Paulette is here for the drama. So
good.
Well, hopefully we can give her some good drama today.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I've got so many stories from this process.
I do too. But did you like the movie? Like, did you see it before you saw the musical?
So I'm trying to think of when I first saw the movie. I remember I mean, we can get into kind of the timing of everything and how, like, the process played out, but I want to say that I heard that we were doing the musical and I watched the movie after that. I had very little knowledge of the musical prior to that.
Mm-hmm. Which is unusual for you.
Right. And we'll talk about it more, but it was like the summer of Heathers. Like, it felt like every single theater company in the state was doing a production of Heathers. Mm-hmm. And the musical was fresh. It was off Broadway at the time. Like, everybody was falling in love with this show. But as soon as I knew that was what you were planning to do, I was like, okay, great. I need to watch the movie.
Right.
And I felt very similarly to the way you described your feelings about it, that, like, it was really, it had that very 80s cult classic kind of energy to it. And it was a fascinating watch that I enjoyed it. I thought it was a funny movie. I thought it was a really well-written movie. But it was definitely giving those 80s, like, school drama vibes, but taking it in a whole different direction that, wasn't really typical. So
yeah.
I really liked the movie, and I was fascinated to see, like, how the musical would play out and what that looked like.
Yeah. So. And Winona Ryder, I believe it was her agent at the time, told her not to take that role.
Oh, really?
And it resonated with her so much that she took it anyway. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, I'm so glad that she did, because I definitely feel that she elevated that movie. Mm-hmm. And of course, now looking back at it, now that we have, like, Stranger Things and everything, younger generations can find it easier through Winona being involved. But Veronica is such an iconic character at this point, and the Heathers, and JD, that it's such a good time. But we have a lot of tea to talk about.
Oh, yes.
And also, so it's interesting to me that you didn't know the musical very well. So at this point, it was around my senior year of high school, I was introduced to the musical. Mm-hmm. And I would watch a bootleg of it on my phone, almost on repeat. I think I watched it about, like, 4 or 5 times. Yeah. And would attempt to sing the Veronica songs, which, if you know the musical, are very tough to sing. Absolutely. They're belty songs, but you have to belt really high, which not everyone can do.
Right.
And I just loved it. I couldn't believe that it existed. I was like, what is this? Like, I almost went and saw it off Broadway. That's how much I loved it. Yeah. So when we did finally, like, get the rights to do it, I was very excited, because as we know, I had wanted to do it the first year.
Right.
So now that I got it the second year, we had one show under our belt. We were a little bit more seasoned. I was bringing you on. I was like, this is going to be a good time for sure.
Yeah.
It's going to be big fun.
It was, and it certainly was big fun for sure.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, talking about the order of you doing, you wanted to do Heathers initially, you went with Grease, and then you finally got this opportunity to do Heathers. I just think it was such a great counter show to that experience that we had in high school, but also coming off of the heels of doing Grease and it being a show that was even more like, it was the summer where everybody was doing it, but it was definitely a kind of counterculture kind of musical from that standpoint, where, like, everybody was telling these happy stories, and they were, these really joyful musicals, and we're like, okay, great, we're going to go out here, we're going to tell the story, and we're going to give it all of the passion it deserves and all of, the energy that it deserves, because it is a serious show, but it's a great show. It's a great show.
Right, and I think, too, growing up in the era of school shootings, and I think it's even worse now for younger generations than it was for us per se, but we went to school post-Columbine, so that's all we knew. All we knew were the drills and the bomb threats, gun threats, whatever. Like, they were a regular thing. So I think getting a group together, a production team together who we were at, honestly, the perfect age to really understand that. I think that made us better at presenting the material, because I'll talk to, my parents or other people's parents, and we'll kind of like start like touching on that conversation of school systems, and they just, their fear of that type of thing is completely different than what we experienced.
Sure.
And like, I remember even telling them, oh yeah, we had this drill today, and they were, it's something they never even really went through. I mean, they went through different types of like school drills, like tornado drills and whatever. But it was actually really interesting that this movie came out in the 80s is kind of ahead of its time in a weird, gross kind of way.
Really unfortunate way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I at least felt really proud and really good about being able to put a bunch of young adults up there and tell this story and focus on the aspect of people coming together when a psycho does a horrible thing, and that idea of building community at the end, which we'll talk about, but it definitely resonated with me. I feel the message for this one at least touched me more than the message for Grease, for sure.
Yeah, so I guess to get into kind of the setup of selecting and moving into Heathers, do you remember when you officially made that decision to go and do the second show, and when you got the rights for Heathers?
So I don't remember officially making the decision that we were going to do a second show. I think in my mind throughout the Grace process, I don't think there was ever a question that I was going to keep doing it. I think there was a question in other people's minds on if I was going to keep doing it, but for me, it was just like the logical next step.
Yeah. It
had never occurred to me that it was even a decision. So when my dad was like, when he had that moment of what, you're doing a second one, that was unique to him. Like, I didn't have that experience. I was just like, of course I'm doing a second one. What are you talking about?
Right.
And I remember even during Grace, people recommending next shows to me.
Absolutely.
And one of the ones they actually recommended was Into the Woods, which we were not equipped for at the time, which ironically we are doing now. So
which we are equipped for now, yes.
We are. But it's interesting to think, these people were recommending different shows, and they were obviously having a good time if they were doing that. So it just never occurred to me that there was another option. There was a third option, which was don't do it anymore. It just wasn't in my brain at all.
Right.
Especially after we had our conversation after Grease. I was like, well, I mean, Joel wants to work on this now, so we gotta find something interesting.
Find a good show to do, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd apply for the rights. I got the rights. Another company in the area had a teen theater something, and the person who was heavily involved in it was the owner of the company's daughter, and she was around my age, maybe a couple years younger. And she had found out through the grapevine that we were doing Heathers, and she was very angry. She was like, no, we're doing Heathers. And I was like, actually, you're wrong. I have the rights for Heathers. I'm doing Heathers.
Yes.
And I had even reached out to the owner of this company, because, again, this was like their teen program thing. This wasn't a main stage for them. And for those of you who don't know, like, the business logistics of how our teen camps work and stuff like that, many times we've run into, hey, I'm doing this show, please stay away from it, or I'll request that of someone else. And, we're able to work very nicely together. I'll plug Constellations Theater, the owner of that program, and myself. I feel we have a great working relationship, and if he tells me, hey, please don't do this show, I stay away from it, and vice versa. So it's just kind of something you try your best to do to build relationships in the community. Absolutely. And also offer the most opportunities to the community as possible.
Right, you don't want to oversaturate the market.
That's the end goal. So, like Beetlejuice was a perfect recent example of that. We just did Beetlejuice Jr. He had wanted to do it, but before that, I had wanted to do Mean Girls Jr. and he did it. So we kind of alternated. It was like, okay, you take Mean Girls. Oh, since you just had Mean Girls, I'm going to take Beetlejuice. As someone who lives in the community, a parent or a teenager, you don't want 50 productions Beetlejuice happening all at once. It'd be nice if they're spread out so you could maybe do it again if you wanted to. Well, this particular company, I emailed them and I said, hey, I'm a new company. I already have the rights for this. I've already paid for the rights for this. The show is really important to me. You know, I would like to respectfully ask that you pick another show if at all possible, because I feel like both of our ticket sales are going to hurt by us both doing this.
Yeah.
And he emailed back and he basically said, hey, I don't think it's going to affect either of us at all. We're going to move forward with it. Okay, I did my part. You know, that's what I could do. I did it. So I was like, all right, here is where it gets a little complicated. They had auditions before me. Well before me. So I was actually at college doing a showcase when their cast list got released. And I remember freaking out a little bit because two of my leads from Greece were on that cast list.
Yes.
And I didn't know, you have to remember I was so new at this that the idea of a bunch of new people coming out was foreign to me. I was totally relying on who I'd already worked with, and I was like, oh, I know this person could probably do this role. I know I have options for this, that type of thing. And that's normal when you're picking a show, is you want to make sure you have a network of people that are at least options for some of the difficult parts. And then if, you know, someone new comes in and blows your socks off, awesome.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was freaking out. I was like, okay, I don't know what this means for us. And mind you, JD is a very, very difficult part for a male to sing. So Veronica's super difficult, so is JD. And that's one thing I've also noticed, at least in our area at the time. A lot of the young women we had auditioning were actively taking vocal lessons or had recently. That was not the case for the guys. A lot of them were not taking vocal lessons, so they were trying to sing these notes and didn't know how to sing them in a healthy way. Yeah. So that was scary. I knew I was probably going to have other female options, but the male options, I was like, I don't know. So that happened, and I think, did I text you about, like, did I screenshot it to you? How did we have that conversation?
I remember us having that conversation, and, like, this was, you know, we had already kind of gotten into the setup of where we were at and what we were going into for the show. But I remember us contacting and talking about that situation. And I think it was just, we'll see what ends up coming out of auditions or what ends up happening, and we'll just work from it from there. It's a similar mindset that we kind of still have to this day of, you know, we encourage our performers to, you know, people who do shows with us to audition everywhere, take every opportunity.
Right.
And I think at that time it was a little bit harder because, I mean, you had just done one show. I hadn't done a show in years. So, like, being in that position of, like, okay, so how do you handle this outside of the realm of, like, a high school setting or, like, you know, brand new, fresh into community theater? What does that process look like?
Well, and I think for me, it felt personal. And the reason being is I had, like, kind of put myself out there with the owner of this company, like, asking for kindness in this situation. Yeah. And he, you know, assured me, oh, it's not going to affect either of our groups. When that cast list came out, I was like, guess what? It already affected me. And, like, there was almost no doubt in my mind that the people who were in Greece who ended up auditioning for that version of Heathers, if they weren't doing Heathers, would have just auditioned for mine. So at the time, like I said, it felt very personal. Now, you know, we have stuff like that happen all the time, and you just have to let it go. Like, if you dwelled on it every single time something like that happened, you wouldn't be able to function.
Right.
You meaning me, as a person. But it's just, it's easy when you're in that situation and you're 19 years old. It's easy to take it personally, and it's easy to doomsday about it. Because I was like, oh my God, am I going to have the people, I don't know. Now, where it gets kind of crazy is Paulette was one of those people who was in the other show. And she came to our auditions, and she listed all her show conflicts for the other show. Now, she was a different role in this other show. And when we saw her, we were like, this is Veronica. Like, I don't care. We will bend over everything. We will move the mountains. We'll move the mountains to make sure that she can be Veronica in this show, because she is Veronica. And because of that, she had a very complicated schedule because she was already in the show, and I was like, I'll work with it. And we did. And it was complicated because when we moved the times, people, you know, who were expecting a certain time were like, hey, I can't do that anymore. And then we had to go back to the drawing table and rearrange until we got something that we could work with. But that's how bad we wanted her after that audition. And I remember, we'll revisit audition discussions after I tell this story, but I got a text from her out of nowhere, and it was like, hey, I need to talk to you. Can you meet me at, I think we met at a Dunkin' Donuts. It's like, yeah. Which, if you know me as a person, I really don't like cryptic messages like that. They really bother me because, and it's not the person sending it, it's not their fault. It's just, when I get a message like that, I want to know immediately what I'm walking into.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I gotta just breathe and meet her at this time, and I'm gonna find out then. Like, I'm trying not to guess what this is. But of course, in my mind, I'm like, she's quitting the show. We're not gonna have a Veronica. We already cut people. Like, what are we gonna do? So I met with her. And basically what happened, which I'm hoping we'll get a chance to interview her, because I would love to hear her side of this story again. But this other company who said it wouldn't affect our companies forced her to drop out of their show because she accepted a role in our show.
Yeah.
Which I was just like, angry doesn't even begin to describe how I was feeling that moment. Now, like, to be completely fair, I'm pretty sure that program was run by teenagers. And they were feeling petty. And, like, I get it. I feel petty sometimes, too. I just try not to let that pettiness affect someone else in that way.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, you know, Paula was someone I'd grown very fond of. I'd started to consider her a friend at this point, and she was completely devastated by this, like, just torn apart.
Yeah.
She's someone who deeply cares about her reputation in the community, always tries to do the right thing. So for something like this to happen that was seemingly, like, out of her control and out of my control was heartbreaking for her.
Yeah.
So I really, really felt for her in that moment. And she was like, that being said, you know, I'm doing your show. I'm all in. We don't have the schedule conflicts anymore, but I thought I, you know, owed it to you to tell you what was going on, which I respected the hell out of. I mean, it's really, really hard to have those conversations, also to be vulnerable with someone who is in an authority role to you. But yeah, they said something like, we're just worried your voice can't handle it, or something like that, which you and I both know Paulette, and if anyone's voice can handle it, it's hers. Right. So I think they were just uncomfortable with the fact that there was crossover.
Yep.
Which, okay, they should have said that in the email to me, though, because I could have made sure that, you know, my people I care about weren't put in that situation. But it is what it is. And luckily she was surrounded by people who were excited to have her there and wanted to have her there. And again, you know, not trying to say anything bad about this other company. Like, I believe these were teenagers running this program. I don't even know that the head of the company knew what happened. And I'm sure with time they've improved some of those policies. But when I was just starting out, I was like, why do these people hate me so much? Like, I didn't do anything to them. What in the world? Like, if anything, I went above and beyond to communicate with them. So that had really caught me off guard. And I was like, okay, it wasn't a competition, but you kind of made it one.
Right.
And now I've got a fire under me, and I want to do the better show. The quote-unquote better show, if that's a real thing. But at the time, that was my pettiness, is I was like, all right, I wasn't considering this to be a battle, but now it kind of is.
Yeah, I think that set the tone, like you said, for the entire rest of that process. I mean, we were very attuned to what was going on with that other production. We had heard things after our production about their production. And I like to, after many years of experience in this process and doing, countless shows at this point, I struggle with this. I know you struggle with this as well, but like that comparison process of what is this show doing? What is this company doing? How are they doing? And it's a very hard thing that I always personally try to remind myself of, it's not a competition, because we're all just trying to put on good theater, and it's trying to, do the best that we can for our audiences and give our performers the best experience they possibly can have. And, it's sometimes hard to get out of that mindset, but especially when you're doing the same show as another company that, right down the road. I mean,
well, let me tell you that what you named, that is the stuff I do get competitive about now, which is, the actor experience, the audience experience. Like, I listen to what other companies are doing, and I go, okay, how can I do that better? At the end of the day, with community theater, that's the stuff that matters. And obviously, you want to put on a quality production. Everyone's production is going to be a little bit different. There is a company just down the road who, they have 2 shows in their upcoming season that we did recently. And I know people are going to compare them, because that's what people do. And I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not hard. It's going to be hard. I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be difficult when people say, their effect in Sweeney Todd was a lot better than yours, or whatever, because they're going to do something that's better, I'm sure. They're also going to do things that are worse. That's how it works. But hard, just because something is hard doesn't mean it justifies you behaving in a way that isn't right.
Exactly.
And, as an adult, you have to deal with hard shit every day, and you have to process it every day. So it doesn't give you an excuse to go and push those kind of irrational feelings onto an innocent party. And that's what I felt happened in this case. So I think it's made her stronger. It certainly gave me perspective on, it was a little bit of a wake-up call. It's like, not everyone's going to be my friend. That's okay. It's okay, because it has to be okay. As a recovering people pleaser, I would love it if everyone loved me and was my friend, but that's just not reality.
That's not the way that it works.
So, it was definitely like, all right, you made me pissed. I'm pissed now. Let's see what happens. So, as 19-year-old Miranda, I was definitely like, we need to have the better quality show. That's what I was focused on. Experience wasn't necessarily something we could do, quote unquote, better, since we were at a barn with a porta potty.
Oh yes, we will have to get into the barn of it all.
But that's not to discount the fact that, especially coming out of Greece, bringing you on board, we are pretty darn good at building a community for every show. That's something we excel in.
Absolutely.
You can feel when it's off. And we've had shows where it's been off. And you can feel it in the air. But you can also feel it when it's right. And, there have definitely been shows, even recently, where I was like, wow, if anything goes wrong, these people know how to step up and help each other. That's amazing. That's what you want. So... Yeah, but I want to go back to auditions, because I don't want to skip over it, and I want to hear what your first audition process with STS was like.
Yeah, I mean, I'll even go back to before that.
Yeah. Take us back.
Oh, yeah.
Rewind.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back as far as to say, I mean, I remember you reaching out to me about, I was stage manager for Heathers. That was the first show that I had ever done with Small Town Stars. And it was, it was a really interesting time in my life because there was just a lot going on for me.
Yeah.
Grease had ended, and there was some health concerns going on with my mom, and unfortunately she passed away that December. So January, you had been reaching out to me leading up to that point, and then come January, we kind of just jumped right into it, which for me, in that position, with everything going on, was a really great outlet for me. And I know we've talked about it before, but theater was something that I hadn't been doing a lot of. And then with this opportunity, I was like, okay, great. This is something I can do. This is something I'm passionate about. This is an opportunity. So I'll never forget the first meeting that you and I actually had about Heathers was January of, I guess it was 2017 it was summer of 2017 that we did Heathers.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Yep. Uh-huh.
My brain can't go back that far anymore.
Yeah, it was January of 2017, and you and I met it was a Starbucks where we had this meeting. And I just remember you and I having a conversation of this is what you're getting into. You were very excited about the process, and I just was ready for the ride. I was like, okay, great. Whatever this process means, whatever this is going to look like, I'm here for it. There was some concern over people who had worked on previous shows and the rearranging of dynamics and
Jane.
Yes. And I think that process I wasn't overly concerned about. I just was looking forward to just seeing how this process was going to go and how I could best support you in that role. And, I really didn't have any other experience other than what I had in high school. So I'm I'm going off of what I've learned from that experience, and just whatever I could do to support the show was what I was on board for. So.
And for context, we met in January because we were about to go back to school.
Yes.
So we were going to go back to school, finish our second semester or fourth semester. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I was a sophomore in college.
Okay, so finish our semester and then go home and do auditions right away.
Yes.
That was how our summer was going to start, was with auditions. So yeah, that's why we did one show a year for so long.
Yeah.
That and some other reasons, but the biggest reason was we were all in school. We were all working our way through school.
Yeah.
And, part of the reason I had flagged that thing about Jane is she was starting to get a little bit, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess I'll just tell a story to describe what the behavior was, but it was, she would text me many, many times with an argument. One of the arguments was she wanted to do Beauty and the Beast instead of Heathers. And I said, we don't have the money to do Beauty and the Beast instead of Heathers. For some context, we just recently did Beauty and the Beast, and the costumes alone, just the costumes, cost us around $4,000. For Heathers, it was more like $500. So significantly lower.
Yeah.
The set is probably around the same. I think we spent $250 on the set for Heathers total. So it wasn't an option. I tried to explain this to her, and she kept doubling down. So I developed this new strategy with her where every time she would text me, I would say, hey, let's get on a call. It didn't matter what she said. I said, hey, let's get on a call. Let's get on a call. Because every single time when we would get on the actual phone, we would be able to have a rational conversation and come to an agreement. Via text, it wasn't possible. So she's starting to really push for things that I didn't understand why she was pushing for. I was like, I like Beauty and the Beast as much as anyone else, but we just can't afford it. It's not that I don't like the show. It's not that I don't think it'll sell tickets, which is, what she was saying to me. I was like, I agree with all those things. It's too expensive. So it was just, she was starting to get a little unpredictable in that way. And I knew bringing on another leader was going to kind of set her off. So that's why I had given you a heads up of like, hey, she might get upset about this. She also had this kind of pattern of like reaching out to other people around me. So like during Grease, if there was an issue with Sandy's costume at one point, and rather than reaching out to me, she reached out to Sandy directly, and then she would go to me and be like, well, Sandy said she wants this. And I was like, excuse me? So that was also something I was worried about, is I didn't want her going to you and being like, oh, well, actually, Miranda and I don't want you, or something like crazy like that. So
yeah.
I think with time, I'm assuming that she doesn't do that anymore. We haven't talked in years, but I also will give her the benefit of the doubt in the fact that she had a lot of very loud voices and loud opinions around her that I believe were causing her to kind of behave that way. And I don't necessarily think it was all coming from her, but at the end of the day, I still had a business to run, and I was like, one of my leaders is, I couldn't tell you what their next move is. They surprise me every day with some of the things they're saying. So I was really relieved to bring you on, because I knew you were like my security blanket. I was like, I know what to expect from Joel. I know I can run to Joel if I need something. And it's really not a good feeling. And I don't know that you've ever really had this feeling, because it kind of changed when you came in. But like, if you're leading a show and the leaders are not on the same page and it's evident to everyone, that's not a good feeling. You do not want, no one wants that. So I was very, very excited when you came on, and I was just kind of trying to warn you. I was like, I don't want to scare him off with the politics of this.
Yeah, and I can say almost definitively, especially in the early months leading up to that show, I don't remember there being anything like concerning. It was just that first conversation that we had was just very, this is what to look forward to, this is what my plan is. We'll have auditions here, we'll do the show at this point in time. Like, it was just a lot of information to take on, but I don't remember there being anything problematic after that point. And I think, you said it best, after that process, we didn't really do anything until auditions came around.
Right.
Which I don't remember exactly when they fell in that year. I know we went back and forth a little bit with when we did auditions for our early shows. I want to say it was like early, like right after...
I want to say it was May.
Yeah, it was like right after school.
I think we had started doing sign-ups at this point too. So I think we actually had a running list of people who were going to audition.
Yeah, and I mean, you had the auditions in the same location you had them for Grease.
Yes.
Which was a really unique space. I remember going there for the first time and not having any idea as to where it was. And I was like just roaming the streets of Frederick, just like...
trying to find it. It was kind of like tucked away, almost in a parking lot.
Yeah,
it was a very strange... Yeah, because we actually ended up writing Heather's auditions on a chalkboard, and we would put it out onto the sidewalk so people knew where to go. Yeah, and I remember sitting there and like... That was my first audition process in a really long time, and just seeing, I was so used to seeing the same people auditioning from high school and like that process, but seeing the amount of talent and the amount of just genuine interest that the show was bringing. I mean, there were people that I'd never seen before just coming in there and just hitting it out of the park. Yeah. Hitting it out of the park. And like, I think my favorite thing about our audition process is and I think this was the same situation for Heather's, but, to this day, our big focus is having people select songs from the show and giving them kind of parameters of what songs to select. Yeah. And I remember hearing a lot of candy stores. Oh, yeah. From auditions. A lot of candy stores. Oh, a lot of lifeboat. A lot of lifeboats. We heard so many lifeboats. Yeah, so that's always one of my favorite things about our audition process is, just wondering what song we're going to hear the most of. And, usually a lot of people like to play it safe for auditions. I'm always amazed when people come in and pick the harder of the songs, because I'm like, okay, you went for it. Regardless of how it goes, just, you ran with it. But I remember hearing a lot of the same song over and over again. And yeah. And I also the thing that I loved about that space was that the only separation between us in the audition room and the waiting area was just a curtain. Yep. So we had to be very quiet with our deliberations, and there was a lot of back and forth of like, okay, what do we do? How do we handle this? That type of process. But
I don't remember a whole lot specifically, though, from auditions, other than hearing a lot of the same song and that, setup.
I just remember feeling like I needed a lifeboat by the end of auditions. It was like...
Yeah. That's a note for everyone listening, take some risks. Don't go for, and I don't even want to say that that's the easiest
Listen, it was our fault for putting that song there. So at this point in the company, we actually actively try to predict what song people will latch onto, and we don't give it as an option because it's not fair to the 20th person that sings that song that by the time, like, as soon as we figure out what song they're singing before they even walk into the room, we're like, oh my God, not this again. And that's not fair. No one wants that. So
it's not.
We try to pick songs that we think will have a good spread of people. And then people will be like, Miranda, why didn't you list Agony for Into the Woods auditions? I'm like, it's because I didn't want to hear it 50 times. That's why.
Yeah.
And I know it's a banger. You don't have to tell me twice, but I want to hear it 3 times, not 50.
Right. And like those specifically with Agony, it's like, I want to hear that with 2 people. I want that to be a callback song. I want it to be, there's a lot of thought.
And we didn't even use it for callback.
Right. Exactly.
I haven't even heard the people sing it yet.
Right.
I'm excited to tonight.
Yeah, me too. There's a thought process that goes into deciding what songs are best for auditions and how they can be best implemented. And that's, probably not something that people think about, but, we select the songs that we know are going to showcase voices well and are...
or give us what we need in order to make decisions.
100%,
I think that's the big thing.
100%. So that audition process was big fun. Big fun.
I have a quick audition tip. I think we'll sprinkle them in throughout episodes.
Sure.
But we should definitely do a side episode that's just about auditioning.
Auditions. Oh, absolutely.
My audition tip is if you pick on an audition song that has a big moment in it or a big note that is difficult, if you can do that or hit that note, make sure that is in your time selection for your audition.
Yes.
Because if you pick any other time, I'm going to be sitting there wondering, oh, they probably picked a different time because they can't hit that note 100%. At the end. So if you can hit it, make sure you do it. Because that's what people are going to be waiting for and wondering if you can do. There's my tip for the day.
Really good tip. I agree with that 100%.
And if you can't hit it, don't do it.
Right.
Don't try it. Unless you can hit it consistently, by consistently, I mean 85% of the time, don't blow out your voice for an audition. It is not worth it.
Nope. 100%. 100%.
All right.
Do you remember what the casting process looked like? I know we talked a little bit about dealing with selecting our lead, Veronica. Yeah. The biggest thing, and I'll probably say this over and over again, but that cast was an incredible group of people.
It was stacked.
I mean, it was 100% stacked.
Yeah, I do remember some Grease people getting upset because they didn't get lead roles. And again, we talked about this with Grease with my high school friends. Now we're talking about it with Heather's, with my Grease peeps who were in the trenches with me. I think it was hard for some of them to go into another audition and not get what they wanted because I think they were kind of like, well, we went through the trenches with you. And again, that is very true. And if I could give everyone that I liked the parts they wanted all the time, I would, but it's literally not possible.
Right.
And that was, that was a tough adjustment. It's just reminding myself we were running a business at the end of the day, and we always have to keep that in mind. So that, that was hard with some of those people that I really enjoyed, knowing that they were disappointed. But as we've done a lot of auditions at this point, I've kind of mentally prepared for the fact that people are literally always going to be disappointed, and there's nothing you can do. You just have to make the right decisions, what you think are the right decisions.
We've talked about that before, but I've never been in a casting room where I feel like I can give everybody what they want at the end of the day. It's not possible. It's not possible. And it comes down to making a lot of really, really tough decisions, and a lot of factors are at play from those auditions.
Right. I mean, you can't have 10 Veronicas and no ensemble.
Yeah, but you can't have 3 Heathers. That's, hey.
You get 3 of them, and that's great. Mm-hmm. And those are, talk about amazing opportunities for female performers.
Yes. Oh my gosh, 100%.
Incredible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We talked about that character development, but there's so much to work with those characters. So much to work with.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember. I know cast list went out, and I kind of remember the read-through a little bit.
Yes, I do.
Do we want to talk about the rehearsal space a little bit?
Yes, we talked about this a little bit in Eric's interview, mm-hmm. but it was a barn.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
barn. Let me just say, no, I'm not going to say it because I actually don't want anyone to steal my idea.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to say it. Never mind.
I'm getting what you're saying. Yeah.
Never mind. Uh-huh. But it does have to do with farm life.
Sure. Sure.
I don't want to say it though.
Uh-huh.
But it was a large barn.
Concrete slab.
We had already moved our set in, so it was in there. It couldn't quite all fit. I think 2 pieces, or am I mixing that up with Spring Awakening?
No, I think it was Heather's, because the Spring Awakening set had that cutout section in the back, and I think everything did fit.
Okay, so there were 2 sections that weren't attached to the platform. Yes. So the platform was a little bit shorter than what it was going to be on stage, mm-hmm. but it was really close to exactly what they were going to use.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was Spring Awakening, the full set for Heather's. Very similar sets there for 2 years.
Now we're there.
Yes.
The full set did fit for Heather's.
Yes.
Across the barn.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was foreshadowing to Spring Awakening. We'll talk about that later. But the full set was there, which was amazing. So the cast just walked in and saw the set.
Mm-hmm.
We had a porta potty around the back side of the barn.
We had cows.
Mm-hmm. This is actually part of my origin story on why I stopped eating red meat. I'm not even kidding. It's because of those cows.
Yeah.
But the platform itself was really cool.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So the bottom section, you could actually pull little seats out. There were little triangles, seats that you would pull out of the platform. You could sit on them, and then you could push them back in.
Mm-hmm.
There was a compartment on the upstage right side that you could put props in and a human later, which wasn't my idea. I just supported it. What else? There was storage compartments under the main section. So we put supports where we needed to, but I remember there was one main section that had an opening in the middle, so we could throw the pillow and blankets and stuff for Dead Girl Walking into it.
Mm-hmm.
It was honestly one of my favorite sets. Mm-hmm. I love how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool. It was a game changer for the Art Center.
Right, perfect for the Art Center. Nothing had to come on and off stage for the most part. It was just all on stage the entire time.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And they got to practice with it from day one.
Yep.
Just
dream
amazing.
Scenario to some extent.
Yeah.
A little bit of a hot or a warm dream
scenario.
Well,
I think we all left that show being in a little better of shape. I think we sweated out some negative vibes and pounds.
Yeah, I mean there was no air conditioning.
No,
it was
summer.
Heat of summer.
Yeah. Luckily, our actors were in the shade. At least there was that because the barn did have a really tall ceiling.
Yeah, and it was 2 stories. I mean,
it was 2-story barn, and we had fans. Running. By we, I mean the actors had fans running. So you and I were standing outside of the
garage
barn.
Door. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just sweating profusely, taking notes on the run through. We also, something I remembered, and Paulette made an announcement about this, not realizing it was me because she never would have yelled at me, but I deserved it in this moment, was I sprayed bug spray on myself, but I sprayed it in the barn, not thinking I should have stepped out. And she was like, stop spraying bug spray in here. I was like, I'm sorry, it was me. But I needed it because I'm allergic to certain types of bugs. I don't even know which ones, but I will swell up. Like, the bites themselves swell up really bad. So I was just constantly spraying myself down with bug spray and sunscreen, just, like, trying to stay alive. Yeah. But, honestly, it was so much fun. It was... I loved it. I got so much sunshine, you know?
It was giving the energy of, like, summer camp. It was like, we're all out here, we're just having a great time. And it was long hours. I, at the time, was living, like, 35 minutes away from the rehearsal space. And it was long hours in the evenings, but we were up there and we were just it was a great time.
We would start rehearsal with the sun up, and then it would go down. I would always go up and just pet the cows before rehearsal, and they would lick your hands. Yep. I remember that the porta potty. I mean, you can visualize this for yourself, listener, but in the heat of summer with like 20 plus people using that porta potty, it got really bad. They did come clean it regularly, but you could tell when they like missed a day or were going to do it the next day because it got really bad. Yeah. Yep. But it was a bathroom.
It worked.
It worked.
Wouldn't be the last time we had to use a porta potty either.
No.
So,
No.
It was just a good learning opportunity for us. So.
Yeah, and that hurt too because that was like $200 a month or something for the porta potty, which honestly isn't that bad, but
it was a necessity.
When you consider all the costs that go into a production, it was like, seriously? I have to...
100%.
I mean, we could have all just, like, squatted out back, but I don't know.
That probably wouldn't have been preferred.
It's nice to have a door.
It is.
And a little sink.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, so, I mean, that was the rehearsal space. Like I was saying a minute ago in reference to our read-through. Yeah. But I just remember being there for that first night, and, you know, I didn't quite know how the read-through was going to work for a musical in that kind of situation. And, like, I remember playing the music for the first time, and by the time we got to the show, I realized what kind of draw or what kind of popularity the show was going to have. But until we were playing the music and I heard everyone just singing all of the music from day one, ready to go, I was like, oh, okay, so people really do feel very passionate about this musical, and there's a huge interest in it.
Yeah, I definitely had a moment during the read-through where I was like, wow, our JD and Veronica could perform this tomorrow if they had to. Like, they already had the harmonies. And I was like, how do you already have the harmonies? You guys are crazy. But it was a really cool moment hearing all of them sing the show. And I was like, we're in good shape.
Oh, yes.
We're in really good shape.
I will say, I know we're going to have more opportunities to discuss kind of the rehearsal process because I have other memories from it. But I will say one of my favorite things from that rehearsal process, very early on, I was not sure what my role as stage manager was going to entail. And I remember very early in the process, I was creating very detailed rehearsal reports. Like, I was full Word document with description of who was late and what was going on at rehearsal and what people could expect from the next rehearsal. And it was very, very detailed. I remember I had a binder with page protectors of every rehearsal report that we had. I had a sign-in sheet. Like, it was the whole 9 yards. But I still at that point was not sure as to what or how best I could support you through that process of rehearsing. And I will never forget, and I'm sure I think about this moment a lot, especially now that we're this far into this process. And
I'm so curious what this is.
Well, so it's very moving for me to think about it. But I remember the first time of you saying, Joel, what do you think we should do in this moment?
Oh.
And I think for me in that moment, I was like, okay, this is, Miranda wants my insight, wants my feelings on how we could do this. And that, for me, was very like, okay, great. I felt part of the process at that point. And I was not just like this extra person there that was like helping to keep track of things and stage manage. I was actually an integral part of this process and providing my insight. And I think from that point forward, I haven't shut up about my thoughts in the process. But
that's something I love about you, though. most people don't get to see the fully unfiltered Joel, and I love it when you come and, like, if we're not working on something together, if I'm directing something, solo or with someone else, you'll come into a run-through, and you'll take notes, and then when you share those notes with me, some of them are brutal, and I just love it. I'm like, yes, tear them apart, like, tell me exactly everything I did wrong, and then I can fix it. But I love that we have that relationship, and I think I've done the same thing with you, or, I'll see a run through, and I'll be like, yeah, that one thing, you need to fix that, and you'll be like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, I just, from that moment on in Heather's, I was like, okay, great. So I felt like there was a piece of me going into the creation of that show, and I think that's why I feel so attached to it to this day, and, like, I try and add that into every experience that we've had up to this point of, like, okay, well, how can I help make this show something that I believe in and support, and I think that's what makes our working relationship so strong, because we're very much so of the same mindset, but we also have our opinions and our own feelings about theater, and we find, like, a happy medium, and I think that really helps with the quality of the shows that we develop. So all of that was born from the Heather's process. But,
yes, it was definitely, like, a crucial part of our story is doing this show together.
For sure.
And I'm really relieved and glad to hear that you felt like an equal part of that, because that was definitely my intention, and sometimes it's difficult to know as a person, like, what type of vibe you're giving off, so I'm glad that in that moment you felt like you had permission to step in and be a creative partner.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I have some other stuff from later on in the process, but I felt like at that point you were giving me the opportunity to have, like, not only agency over the production or support over the production, but also if I thought something was not great, I could voice that opinion, which I think you might know what I'm hinting at from a specific situation at the theater, which we'll get to. But
Okay,
yeah. So, it was a really big moment in that process for me, but those rehearsals were long nights, but really, it was a really good bonding experience for our cast, and I think they took a lot from that process.
We also did like an all-day dress rehearsal, which we never do, and we, like, got snacks and everything. Like, I took the day off work because I usually worked during the days at the time, because I think it was a weekend day, and I waited tables, so I worked at a restaurant during the day, so I took off work. We got, like, pizza and stuff, and we ran the show twice, and it was so much fun.
One other thing that I learned about, so I mean, I'd seen Grease, so I remember, the tricks and, like, the detail that went into creating some of those numbers, and watching that firsthand of, like, okay, so for Big Fun, you're going to flip, we're going to take you over here, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's going to be a very, very active number, and I'll never forget rehearsing that in the barn, and, like, the spotters that were needed, and, like, you had a vision in your mind of how that number was going to look, and come hell or high water, that vision was going to come alive, and it was all just created in that barn. And
it was crazy. Like, so Big Fun was a lot easier than Grease Lightning, but looking back on it, part of what was so crazy about that process, and I've done numbers semi like that recently. Like, I would argue Extraordinary Girl and American Idiot. It's, like, kind of similar, where there's constant tricks happening.
Yeah.
The thing that was interesting, though, was Big Fun was constant tricks happening with different people in different sections at all times. So if anything was delayed or late, the whole thing would be thrown off and actually dangerous. Like, we would have to hold it and stop.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you had to make sure you were hitting your spot. Otherwise, you could get kicked by someone or hit or whatever. But it ended up being a very cool number. I'm still very proud of it. But it definitely, I think, I love the people we work with. Let me preface it with that. How do I phrase this in a way that doesn't make me sound like a jerk? people are extra aware of safety policies now. And overall, it makes us a safer company. And I appreciate that and am glad for that. I think sometimes numbers like Big Fun happen because we're collectively as a group willing to take some risks.
Absolutely.
And I don't know that there's really been another group since that I've had that vibe with that I'm like, we can take some risks together. I mean, so by some risks, I mean like Extraordinary Girl and American Idiot doesn't even hold a candle to how complicated Big Fun was.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It just isn't even close. And, like, that was the most risky I've gotten in 5 years. So that should give you kind of an idea of where we're at with things. But, again, you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. You got to remember that theater is a physical activity. And anytime you do any physical activity like a sport, there is an inherent risk of injury. Absolutely. And I think you try to minimize it as much as possible, but also you want to be careful not to take creativity and like fun out of it. And I think there's a balance there, right? There's a balance of I want to try this cool thing and like, yeah, if someone's picking someone else up, the risk of someone getting hurt goes up a little higher than if we were just on the ground the whole time. So we're always trying to find that balance. And I think for me, it's a tougher one because sometimes, well, I want to say sometimes, this is why you're really good at balancing me. I usually want to go further than most people want to go. And then you rein me in, and then we find a compromise, and we end up with some really great material. But Big Fun definitely happened because everyone was like, yeah, I don't care if I get hurt. Let's go for it. And I was like, cool, great. Especially the guy that played our JD. He kind of set the bar because, like, I had this idea before before Fight for Me. When the fight starts, I was like, I really want you to kind of like flip over this guy's shoulder. And he was like, okay, can I do it now? And I was like, what, you just want to do it? And he was like, yeah, I just want to try it. So we had spotters and everything, but this man just yeeted himself over this other guy's shoulder. It was amazing. And I was like, that's it. And then I feel like from that moment on, everyone kind of saw that and they were like, oh, okay, like we have permission to try things and like, yeah, we might, you know, get bruised or whatever, but also we have people here that are watching us and doing their best to keep us safe within the set of circumstances. Absolutely. So it's an interesting conversation that this won't be the end of, but
for sure.
I think it's it just cracks me up sometimes what people are scared to do now when I ask them to do things, and I'm like, you don't even know. I used to be way crazier.
I think that's a really good transition into a separate conversation for the rehearsal process. I want to talk about props for a minute.
Okay.
Specifically, Big Fun props.
There
are two that make me laugh to this day. So you were talking about what you were doing during the day throughout this rehearsal process. I was home from school and I'm like, this is my summer I'm devoting to theater. I
love that for you.
Right. I devoted my time, energy, everything during that summer to working on Heathers. And I was just like, this is what's happening. The other thing I was doing, I'll never forget this, that summer I watched The Office for the first time all the way through.
Oh.
So I was like, during the day, I was working on props and watching The Office.
That sounds like a great time. I want to do that now.
But I will never forget, specifically with Big Fun, sitting at home, we had a prop during Big Fun that still gives me nightmares, and it was a tray of shot glasses. Do you remember the tray of shot glasses, Miranda? I think you do.
I hadn't until right now, but yes, I do.
So we had a tray of shot glasses, and I will never forget, they kept falling over because it's a very active number, a lot going on. So our mindset was hot glue, a ring of shot glasses around the tray, and then in the middle, let those be loose, because if they're trapped in the inside, people can grab them and they're not going to fall off.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget sitting at home the first day that I was preparing this prop and gluing little shot glasses onto this platter and then putting them in the center, watching The Office, getting that taken care of, fine. going to rehearsal that night and explaining to everybody, hey, we're running Big Fun tonight. The shot glasses in the middle of the platter are the ones for you to take, and the ones on the outside are glued to the plate. Do not try and grab them.
If you feel resistance, stop.
Do not pull on them. The number of times that we would leave rehearsal at the end of the night, and I would have a plate with just shot glasses everywhere. The glued ones had been pulled up. Everything had scattered everywhere. Yep. It was like the bane of my existence. And I went through so much glue that summer.
There were people who, I don't know who they were, but they would go up, try to grab a shot glass, feel resistance, and go, I need to pull harder.
Yep. They had to.
It's the only way.
Yeah. So I'll never forget that prop specifically. The other one from that number that I will never forget. The first time we did the number, there's the moment where Veronica is learning from two of the Heathers how to take a shot.
Yes.
And we decided we're going to really go in on this. We're going to go and we're going to have limes for each performance.
I don't remember that.
We had limes. We had limes and we had salt. And I remember standing in my kitchen, again, watching The Office, and dicing up limes.
Yeah.
So that way we would have slices of limes, and I had little Tupperware containers that I would put these lime slices in, and every night that we were going to run that number, I'd come in. We had a refrigerator right inside the door. Do you remember we had the little refrigerator?
Oh,
and I'd have a little container of diced up limes.
Yeah.
Specifically for that show. But, I'll just weird, like, prop memories. I'll never forget buying the limes and gluing those stupid shot glasses to that platter.
I have another prop memory from that number, actually. Yeah. The keg.
Oh, yeah.
We had a keg on stage.
We did have the keg, yeah.
So that whole thing happened because my dad's friend... Well, this is a weird thing I didn't know was weird growing up, okay? He has a friend we call Aunt Lisa. She's a twin. Okay. So she has a twin sister. She also has two brothers that are twins.
Oh, okay.
They were in the newspaper. Her parents were in the newspaper because they had two sets of identical twins. And I didn't realize that was weird, but it is weird. So, anyway.
It's just unusual.
Yeah. One of her brothers brewed beer.
Oh, okay.
So that's how we got the keg. It was free. We got to use it for free and then return it, but we had a keg and we had someone do a keg stand and it was awesome.
Yeah.
We also had a pig piñata.
We did have the pig piñata.
Where did we get that? I have no memory of that.
We had to search somewhere for it, but that did remind me of two other prop finds for that show. Hunting down the chips for Heather Chandler.
Oh.
The corn nuts.
The corn nuts.
Corn nuts, not chips.
They were kind of hard to find at the time. I feel like I see them everywhere now.
Like that specific plain or BQ. BQ was hard, impossible to find. I searched everywhere. I even went to 7-Eleven because you would have thought, of all places, they sing about it.
There's a 7-Eleven right there.
There was, and they weren't there. Finding those, and then also lockers.
It was also, before we transitioned to lockers, it was very, very hard to find the lunch trays, too.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where we ended up finding them. I think that was a Jennifer Sakula special. I think she found them somewhere. But I've kept those lunch... You know the box.
Yep.
I will not get rid of them.
Still a thing. Yep.
I won't... I'm keeping those lunch trays until I die. My kids can have them when I'm dead. They're not going anywhere.
Inheritance, yeah.
Yeah, you get these lunch trays. The lockers. Great idea. Not great execution.
My favorite memory from that rehearsal process, it's fun to laugh about it now, at the time was they did not roll the way that they were supposed to. The wheels were not strong enough to move them.
We needed heavy duty casters, and I think we had small casters on them. And they were freaking heavy. They
looked beautiful on stage.
Oh, yeah.
But I will never forget, we had a rehearsal where we were breaking people off to figure out transitions. It was a transition work through of the show. And we assigned someone to the lockers. And we said, do you have them? Are you okay with them? And they said, sure.
Yeah.
Because I think we had determined that we needed 2 people on each set of lockers in order for them to move. And they said that they had gotten it. They would take care of them. Mm-hmm. And we went to run the number. The number got started. You and I were standing out watching the number. and all of a sudden the lockers came in, and that one set of lockers was falling. It was in the process of tumbling over.
You're being a little kinder, too. This was an argument.
I guess it was, wasn't it?
We were insisting to this person, you need a second person on the lockers. You need someone. And they were like, no. And they insisted. They insisted that they wanted to do it themselves. Yeah. And then, yes, it started falling on them because it's a 2-person job that one person was trying to do.
Yes.
It was honestly scary. They could have gotten really hurt. They didn't, luckily, but they could have gotten really hurt. Really were flying by the seat of our pants for some of these things.
I mean, we didn't know. I mean, at that time, we didn't think anything about it. And, like, I think of the number of shows now where I'm just, and you mentioned it earlier, the times where I'm like, okay, hey, maybe we should consider doing something else or doing it this way to, like, try and minimize those safety concerns.
Right.
I think we've become much more attuned to that process and making sure that everybody is kept as safe as possible, given the circumstances.
Agreed, 100%. And that was also, some of this stuff was left over from high school, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. Like, we were put in situations constantly in high school where our safety was, at risk, but something had to get done. And that was just how you did it, and that's how we learned to do things. So this new level of, oh, wait, is there a better and safer way to do this? That it's relatively new for us. I mean, we're still trying to make those adjustments because, I mean, all the time, Dakota gets on me about this too, but like when I'm home alone, if I'm trying to get crap done, I do things that are probably precarious, like in the garage or around the house, that if someone saw me, it would be like, what in the world are you doing, you crazy person? But that's how I learned how to get things done. So, and sometimes I intentionally wait until I'm home alone so I don't get judged, and then I just do it. And then I'm like, hey, such and such got done. And he's like, how did you do that? And I'm like, you don't need to know. But it's nice to live on the edge a little bit sometimes. But we've gotten a lot better with being firm on our policies that we know are going to keep people safe.
Absolutely.
I just never forget that visual of those lockers tipping on her and just being like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen.
Yes. Yeah. Well, was there anything else you remember from the rehearsal process? I mean, it was a very... there was a lot. There was a lot that we were working on.
I have a few more things
I want
to touch on before we go into the performance of Heather's.
Yeah.
One of them was, there's a sequence in this show that I'm still proud of and think about to this day, which was Beautiful through Candy Store. So it was about the first 25 minutes of the show. It went Beautiful to Fight for Me to Candy Store. And we had paced those first, 20 minutes of the show so perfectly. It was so satisfying to watch. There was no pause. There was no pause until after Candy Store, and I was, so happy about that. It was just so satisfying to watch. The, during the intimacy scene with Veronica and JD, she has a line where it's better chug that Mountain Dew, and he would drink the Mountain Dew, and then he would throw it behind him.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
One day we had a cast member, we actually always had a cast member stationed there, and one day she caught it perfectly. She snatched it out of the air, and I was like, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
I will never forget that.
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
One of our leaders, I remember I sent her out to get a case of water at one point because it was really hot and the cast needed water. And when she came back, rather than getting out of her car, she started watching the run through from her car. She pulled her car up literally right behind me and you, had the air conditioner running, and was watching the run through. And I was like, no. You need to get out of your car. I was like, if they're in the heat, we need to be in the heat. Because all we have to do is stand here.
Yep.
They have to run a show. So that was, I thought it was a bold choice, and it was a nice try. But I did catch on to it. I was like, no, we're not doing that. I also really loved Heather's nightmare.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Or Veronica's nightmare.
Yeah.
My apologies. But we had, everyone found a hiding place in the set. So it would be a blackout, and then lights would come up, and people would be crawling out of the set, which was amazing. And this was another safety thing. you need to tell people when they're building your set if you're going to have people crawl under it and stuff, because there were nails sticking out of it that,
things,
we had to adjust. And unfortunately, I think someone got scraped, and I was like, I'm so sorry. Which, again, luckily, they were cool about it. I feel like with some people that we've worked with recently would be like, you really hurt me. I'd be like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
Right. But yes. Again, we're more attuned to that type of stuff now, too, which is, yeah.
But we know now. And that was the same thing with our JD really wanted to get in that cubby and pop out of there. And I was like, you can, but there are screws in there.
Screws, and you're going to have to get into the cubby 3 scenes earlier.
Right.
When the curtain was closed.
Which, again, was another thing that now that we feel more confident in our authority, looking back on it, I probably would have said, hey, it's not safe. We're not going to do that. But at the time, I was like, if you're assuming the risk, go for it.
Yeah.
So we learned a lot. Similar to Grease, we learned a lot in this process. This was one of the more fun rehearsal processes of
for sure.
Almost any show.
Yeah. Well, I'll say one thing that you said sparked this memory for me. Do you remember? I'm trying to remember what the song is called. The Heather is the me inside of me. That's what it is. Me inside of me. I knew if I sang it, I'd remember it. I have a clear memory of it being a very late night rehearsal. It was you and I standing out front, and everyone was performing the end of that number. And it was either Heather is or Heather sees. Heather is the me inside. Yes. So there's a lot of repetition at the end of that song. But the repetition, the song, or each line of the song ended with a different word. And I'll never forget, everyone was getting confused by the order of the words. And I got to the point where I was like, we are going to run this number until everybody gets the order of those words right. And I think we ran the end of that song 4, 5, 6 times.
Yeah.
Until across the board, everybody got those words exactly right.
I think you actually had to do something similar with Pippin, too. Some of those songs.
Yeah.
Same deal. Like Morning Glow, it switches the one word on you, and you'll hear 2 people sing the wrong word, and you're like, nope, got to do it again.
Yep.
Can't do that on stage.
Nope. No, and that was one of those moments where I was like, okay, we are going to get this now, and if you do it over and over again, muscle memory, you'll be ready to do it again and again and again.
And it paid off. It definitely did. Sure. Their confidence with that grew. Something we didn't touch on that I think we should touch on before we end this episode that I'm surprised we haven't talked about. We did the original version. You can't do the version of that show anymore.
That's true, yeah. After it went to London, they redid the show. I mean, they added in some songs, they cut some numbers.
I feel like I don't even know the show anymore. I have to re-look at it.
It's very jarring after spending all of that time working on that show to go in and listen to what is, I believe, the licensed version now. And there are songs in there that are so different.
So do Kurt and Ram have a song anymore?
They do. It's a different song, though. And also Heather... not Heather Duke. Heather Duke. Heather Duke has a whole song in there as well. So it's
interesting.
Very, very different. Very, very different.
Yeah, because we did the original one, which had Blue in it. And that gives some context of like how early in the licensing process we actually did this show.
Yeah. It was just a few years after the original off-Broadway production took place. I mean, it was very early on in the process.
Yeah, so we did the original Heathers, which is kind of cool. And I do think they changed it because it was a little cringy, I'll be honest. But it was funny.
It was funny.
As a 19-year-old, it was really funny. So, no complaints there. In the movie, they just tipped some cows.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, that rehearsal process was, for someone who hadn't done theater in a really long time, really, really interesting in a really great way, in an educational way. It was setting us up for a really successful run, I believe.
Were, like, the lack of resources compared to the high school, was that a really jarring thing for you, or were you kind of anticipating that?
You know, Maybe a little bit, but I think, like I said, I was just kind of like along for the ride. I mean, we knew what we needed to do the show. We knew what resources we had.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, great. We need all of the pieces put together and lots of trips to the dollar store to pick up miscellaneous items. And we just made it happen, which was
we did.
really, really fortunate. And, in addition to the dollar store, going to the 7-Eleven a lot for cups and Goodwill, lots of Goodwill trips. We just made it. We found all of the pieces that we needed.
Yeah.
At whatever length we needed to do to get them, which was...
Yeah. A lot of the costumes came from thrifting.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost all of them. Jen made a few things. I think she made some of the Heather skirts, and some other pieces. But I tell you what, if you need an 80s jacket, you can find it at Goodwill.
Oh, yeah.
For the most part.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's another nice thing, but also kind of the difficult thing. Some of these costumes are iconic for the show. Which,
yes.
The
colors especially.
Colors are iconic.
Yeah.
Like, there was some pressure there, I know, of like making sure you did that justice and you told that story and that piece of it right. So
well, I do remember, I think Jen made the Letterman jackets for Kurt and Ram. And listen, these were hot jackets and we were rehearsing out in the sun.
Yep.
A lot of the costumes had to be washed multiple times because, like, legitimately there was too much bacteria on them to be stored anywhere. You had to wash them at least Lysol. But Jen took those jackets home to wash them, and it was right before we went into tech, and she destroyed them because they bled onto each other, and they were ruined. And I remember getting that phone call, and I was like, okay, it's not your fault. Well, it technically is, but, like, I know you didn't mean to do it, and I'm taking a deep breath right now. She was able to remake them in time, but she was having a moment of, like, I don't know if I can remake them. I was like, they need them. They need them.
Requirement.
So I think they actually ended up rehearsing in the ones that had bled. And then for the shows, we had the pristine ones, like, waiting. Because they only had to make it through, like, a weekend, but... Yep. That's not a phone call you want to get. Let me tell you what. Not right before tech.
Nope, not at all.
No. But we'll talk all things tech and theater and
we've got the
venue.
Stories about tech.
We have an iconic story from this set of performances that we still talk about to this day that I can't wait to share with.
At least two of them, but I think I know which one you're referencing. But yeah, it's...
And some good Jacob Bartholow commentary. You can't go wrong.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So.
All right, Snarkies. Well... I hope you enjoyed Heather's.
Part 1. We'll be back with Part 2.
And corn nuts.
And corn nuts. And
BQ.
BQ. Yeah.
We'll have to find some. We can't eat them on the podcast. People would get upset. I would get upset if I was listening to a podcast and someone was eating corn nuts. But they'll be here for show.
We'll have to record the next episode at 7-Eleven. Just seems right.
It does. There's always one right there. There you go.
So, all right. We'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye. And that's a wrap. Thanks for getting snarky with us. We'll see you later.
See you next time.